So our first panel is prioritizing you, and I am thrilled to introduce my friend, our facilitator, Andrea Reay. Andrea is a powerhouse in the world of business and politics. She has a huge heart for nonprofits and community organization and the experience to back it all up. On top of that, she is a wonderful mom to 2 kids. And I'm not just saying all that because she writes my paychecks. She really is somebody that I am honored to call a friend. So with that, Andrea, I'm going to turn it over to you. Hello.
Hey. Sorry, I'm a little dark in this room.
That's all right.
I was prioritizing being comfy.
I appreciate that very much. I wonder if I can have multiple co-hosts. So I'm going to try something here. Okay. So if I can make a co-host, your video turns on. So let's see. I'm going to pop Lauren on here and see if that, okay. All right. So it's make co-host. Make note of that, Rebecca. I apologize. Make co-host once they've been promoted to panelist. Make co-host allows them to turn on their video. So then Stephanie, you should be able to, there we are. And you'll need to unmute yourself. We got it. Appreciate your patience, guys. We got it. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn my video off and I'm going to let these lovely ladies take it away. Enjoy.
Perfect. Thanks again so much, Renata. I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy to be here with Lauren and Stephanie. Lauren is a program coordinator for Seattle Pacific University's art department and a seminarian pursuing her Master's of Divinity and a holistic wellness practitioner. Stephanie Wall is married with a 3-year-old son and 1-year-old daughter. Beyond her work as a full-time parent, Stephanie is a co-founder of Seattle Zero Waste, a local volunteer-run community organization that empowers and inspires people to reduce their waste through meaningful relationships and collaboration. Stephanie, you inspired me, and when we did our check-in, I felt awful. I was drinking out of a plastic bottle, so I have a reusable bottle here now. So just know your influence, has sunk in. So I really appreciate that. And then again, of course, you can learn more about Seattle Zero Waste at seattlezerowaste.com and on Instagram and Facebook. And we are here this afternoon to talk about how we prioritize ourselves, right? So with, busy jobs and families, and, it's difficult sometimes to prioritize ourselves. So I'll just, ask, Lauren, maybe for you to go first. How do you prioritize yourself?
As I was kind of preparing myself for this meeting today, I thought about that a lot this week, especially I'm just entering like the hump over all of my midterms for classes right now. And so, with all of I've just been like kind of in like high productivity mode. And I've been thinking like, what does that look like for me, in this season that I'm currently in? And honestly, more than sort of like the baths and different things, which are all really great, which I love a lot. Just being embodied and making sure that I stay present in my body has been like the best way for me to, go about a stressful existence, 2020, right? As I, when I feel myself getting really stressed, even, as I'm tired and I just need to get stuff done, when I take a moment to just sort of like sit quietly and even just breathe and stop, being so in my head about all that's happening, that, it really changes the way that I approach everything else that I have to do. So I would say right now that that's probably my best answer. That's the smallest thing and the most important thing that I feel like I've been doing to prioritize myself.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Getting out of your head sometimes, right? You just kind of, when you get stuck in there, it can, just around and around and around you go. So yeah, just taking that moment, to stop and breathe. Yeah. So important. Stephanie, how are you prioritizing yourself these days?
Well, thank you. When I was thinking about the things that I do on a daily basis that help me get through the day, it's actually small things. I was talking to a friend recently about how when you're an adult, you end up talking about these types of things like making the bed or getting dressed. And so in the mornings, that's what I've been doing, is making the bed. And it's a small thing, but it signals to me that the day has begun. I've rested most nights with a 1 and 3 year old, and it signals to me that this is the start of a fresh new day. And also something that I've been practicing and been more intentional about it the last few months is actually getting out of my pajamas and putting on quote unquote regular clothes. And so some days that does mean putting on a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt or a long sleeve shirt that's more relaxed. But again, like making the bed, for me, putting on clothes, it's almost like I'm putting on my uniform, or some days it feels like I'm suiting up my armor, right? Depending again on the day. So again, that's a signal to me that I'm transitioning from rest into activity. And then the other thing that I do at night is I journal. I've been journaling regularly, or nightly, for the past few months. Just to share with you, we moved a week before I gave birth to Clara, my daughter, last fall, and was diagnosed with postpartum hormonal depression, which a number of women experience after having a baby. And one thing that my midwife said to me was, journal and write down, what you eat, the activities you do, where there's stressors, so that you can kind of start to see what some of those triggers are. And so that has been extremely helpful for me. And it's become like brushing my teeth. If I don't do it at night, it's once in a while. I don't do it if I'm very, very tired. But again, it's like if I don't brush my teeth, it's that same feeling. And then just one other small thing too. And I think I sent this over to Renata. She was gathering some tips, as far as just those things you do every day. I have something called lavender hydrosol, and it's a spray, and I spray it on my face after I wash my face in the morning and the evening. And again, it's like a trigger to say you're waking up or you're going to rest. So it's those daily small rituals that, for me, it make a huge difference in prioritizing myself.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I actually have on my little to-do list to start a journal, right? So it's one of those things that's, I've always meant to do. And then, I've tried maybe a couple times starting it, but just never, really devoting that consistency. And I feel like when we are talking about self-care and prioritizing ourselves, that's also part of it. Lauren, you talked about, having it be more than, kind of just that like occasional bubble bath, right? It's about what do you do consistently, and how do you make a habit, right, of the self-care? Absolutely. And so, I know there's challenges, right, to making that self-care a priority and being consistent with those, positive, good habits that we all need. What are some of the challenges that you experience with prioritizing your self-care, being consistent with your self-care, and how do you overcome them?
That's a really good question. And I think especially, being on this panel and different things like that, it's brought into focus different ways, and thinking about things that I don't know that I've consciously thought about. And so, you know, especially when things get busy, I know I already said this, but that was sort of, I kept wrestling with just this whole premise in sort of like an especially hard week. It was like, okay, like, you know, I'm about to go and talk about this. Like, how am I living this? What does this look like? You know, I'm in this season of it's tough. You know, there's a lot to do. I didn't put on, you know, normal clothes every day, right? I had some pajama days this week, you know? And so what is it, you know, how, as I constructed that a little bit more, I think that the thing for me is, it, in a lot of ways, it's exactly what Stephanie said. It's just small little things. It's knowing the things that are like, like, I have to do these things to just feel like a person. And some of the other things can go. So like some days, you know, maybe I'm not fitting in that shower. You know, it's not all, you know, for me sometimes, okay, like that just has to go. But for me, it's just been sitting and saying, okay, like what is it that at bare minimum I need? You know, one of those things is sleep for me. You know, I need to be fully rested to approach the day. And so whether that means that if I can sneak in a 20-minute nap, you know, to make it work, because, you know, sometimes we can't always plan out the night, and or, you know, things need to get done. And so if I can do my best to squeeze in those 20 minutes when I can, whether it's during my lunch break, you know, I'll make that happen, because I know that if I have enough sleep, I don't fall into the bad space. Just small things like that. So yeah, sleep is one of those things for me. What's another really great thing? You know, I already talked about sort of the embodiment, but like a real practical tool of that is just getting up to move. You know, I'll be in that intense mode, going, and I force myself to say, okay, like we can, you know, I can barrel through this, but I know that I'm going to be really unhappy about it. And, you know, I don't know that I'll be able to, you know, I don't know that I'll be able to give my best to people later on in the day if I don't take these times. So I will just, wherever I'm at, do some movement, do some stretching, and just, I think for me, that's a reminder of like, hey, like, I don't have to, like, I am not, I don't know how to put this in a way that isn't too, you know, whatever. But I'll just say it, like, I'm not a slave to work. I'm not a slave to doing. Like, I can take this time, I can take these 5 minutes to move. And that's fine. And so I think that for me, it's just about, again, reiterating, like, what are the very small things that, like, these are just my non-negotiable. Like, I'm going to take this break. I'm going to get enough sleep. You know, that's, you know, at this point, I've kind of lost the question or the response, and I hope that covered it.
But no, Lauren, that's perfect, because I think that, you know, what you're saying is, it's so important to know ourselves, right? And when we know ourselves and we know how we feel best and how we're able to work best, then we're able to prioritize, you know, what that is, what that need is. And then we're able to have, you know, better self-care, right? So that it really does all start fundamentally, like you said, with knowing yourself. You know that you need sleep, right? And I think we've all been there. you know, where you get really tired, you get exhausted, you know, you make mistakes that you shouldn't make, right? You know, we're not our best selves, you know, when we're, you know, exhausted. And so knowing what those things are for us individually then lets us prioritize. And the other thing that really hit me, which, you know, some days I'm better at this than others, but it's that giving yourself the permission, you know, when you say you're not a slave to work, right? You know, how do you, you know, it's letting go of that guilt, right? You know, I'm still a good employee if I take a lunch break, right? I'm still a good mom if, you know, I take a walk around the block, right? Or I have to step away for a second. And I think that that's a really important distinction to make. I appreciate that. Thanks so much, Lauren. How about you, Stephanie? What are your non-negotiables? What are your challenges? How do you overcome them?
Oh, well, there are a few as a parent or as a parent of young children. But one thing I heard, I think a speaker talk about once at MOPS, which is Mothers of Preschoolers, is that this time can be a place of scarcity of resources. So you could have scarcity of time, scarcity of energy, scarcity of just patience. So there's a list for different people, right? And so I find that to be true for me, depending on the day. So, you know, some of those things for me it can be patience, especially when I'm really feeling like I'm the center of gravity in the family. So not only children, but husband, right? Like you usually know where things are. You're the one that is being asked the questions. And so, keeping my own center when I'm the center of gravity, that's a challenge. And then for me in particular, I don't know if anyone else can attest to this, but we have a daily schedule that we go by. I made it actually recently, or kind of redid it. I feel you, Renata, where, you know, we have nap time and snack time and get outside time and then lunch and then cleanup. And so there's all those things. But in that, you know, I'll make a list for each day of things that I'd like to get done. You know, I write them all out what I'd like, but I also have like my top 3 that I really need to get done. And then sometimes I find myself like moving towards non-urgent things that are more at the bottom of my list. And I have to catch myself and say, if you do this now, you're going to be behind. And then you're going to like end up cleaning the kitchen after the kids go to bed, where you have time to clean it now. And then after they go to bed, you could have time to like make a fire and read a book, or like, you know, write a letter to someone, or, you know, do you get what I'm saying? You feel me? So, you know, and sometimes, you know, never say never. Like my mom always said, you know, you don't always do that. Sometimes you do have to move to something that like breaks you out of this, you know, maybe a mental cycle or whatever. But those are the types of challenges that I have. And, you know, and honestly, sometimes at the end of the day, the challenge is just wanting to curl up on the couch under a blanket and do nothing when I know I need to do certain things. And it's not a should, like there are certain things that I need to do, like maybe paying a bill or sending an email or sending a text, right? And that's a challenge. And so sometimes you have to, you know, give into that, but then sometimes you do have to get up and do it, or take a 5-minute timer and sit on the couch and I don't know, turn on something that's mindless and then get up and do it. So I'm sure there's more challenges, but those are the ones that really come to the top of my mind.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And I really appreciate what you said about being the center of gravity. I think, you know, as moms, you know, as women, you know, we really do, you know, find ourselves often, you know, as the center of gravity for our families. And I know that puts, you know, we put that some pressure on ourselves, you know, being that center of gravity that maybe, you know, other people aren't even putting on us, right? You know, so a lot of the guilt that we feel, and, you know, our difficulty with, you know, taking that time to prioritize ourselves, actually comes, from within us, as well as it comes, from external sources. And I know I had my big, kind of aha moment, with my husband when my kids were little. I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son now. And, preparing like a really good dinner was something that I had put on myself. Right. So I would work, 10 or 12 hours a day, and then I would come home and, it had to be, a balanced meal, right? It had to be cooked from scratch, nothing out of a box, right? It was really important that, we had that good family dinner. And sometimes, we're not eating dinner until like 8 o'clock at night, right? And, I'm exhausted, and then there's more dishes, and, I had my breakdown. I'm just like, well, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it all. And my husband's like, well, why are you? Right. And it's like, yeah, the kids are just as happy, eating macaroni and cheese and, applesauce out of a box every once in a while as they are, eating, a fancy, roasted chicken with lemon tarragon, right? Let's prioritize, being together and resting together as a family, and, our mental health, rather than, some type of, gourmet meal 7 nights a week. Right. But that was pressure that, I put on myself, because a good mom and a good wife, does these things. Right. And so I really appreciate, somebody in the chat said, yeah, it's about setting those good boundaries. Right. And, setting those boundaries, for ourselves, then, helps us prioritize and, define our non-negotiables. What do you guys think about that?
Say that again, about defining our non-negotiables.
And your boundaries, right? How are you, setting your boundaries, for yourself, and how much of your boundary setting, comes, needs to come from within you, right? Internally rather than externally.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. I think for me, when I think of boundaries, part of it is, I think when I feel myself coming up against a fence or coming up against a wall, which I suppose is like some sort of boundary, I feel like I've gotten a lot better at knowing when that's going to come, or seeing it before I run into it. And so I'm not perfect by it by any means, but I have figured out ways to like let myself know that. And like, particularly now, since we're staying at home, my husband's working from home, because of the pandemic, is letting him know, like, I feel myself moving towards this and I need to back up, or I need to switch directions. Now, like, you got like, can you take the kids for 10 minutes? Or, hey, like, you do this. And he's gotten really good at knowing, like, speaking of dinner, I'll use this as an example, where it's like, let's do takeout tonight, which we don't do that every single night. Like, we do, make dinner a lot. We've kind of gotten a groove. We go to the farmer's market or my husband goes to the farmer's market every Saturday. We're part of a CSA, which is a community supported agriculture. So we also have a perfect food. So, and why you need to know all that? Well, I have a point. So, we have, kind of this system of like food that we know is coming. We know that we have certain types of foods, so we can plan ahead, and we eat a lot of the same things. But we also have some box meals in the cupboard, just in case a day gets ahead of us, or we get behind a day, right? So, I think having, a plan. I like to talk about like planning and, having something that you visualize and you want this to happen. But if it doesn't, then maybe that's what you're talking about, Andrea, with your boundaries, where you say, hey, it's all right, it's cool, we'll just grab that box of food, or do that really simple recipe, or hey, you want peanut butter honey bread, or toast for dinner, like, let's do that. And then, maybe you cut up a carrot stick and give it to the kid. That's, my own reality. But yeah, so I hope that's helpful, and I answered that question about boundaries. But again, for me, it's just starting to recognize when I'm moving towards a place where I need to switch course, and then, move towards that different place.
I totally agree, Stephanie. And something that in what you said really made me think, like, I'm also a very planned person. And so that's really like my safety net, but I know that some people aren't that way. And so for me, like, the key of what you said is, like, you in your routine and in your way of doing life, you've created space for yourself to be self-aware and check in, to say, oh, hey, I feel myself approaching, a boundary or, maybe a not great space, and I need to change course. And I think that is the core, right? So sometimes we're moving so quickly, or maybe we're so hard into our routine that we're not really checking in to where we even realize we're approaching a boundary. And I think that I loved what you said earlier about just like, sometimes it's like, okay, I have these things on my list, but maybe I just want to sit on the couch in a blanket. and that balance, I think, is so important. Like, yes, have your list. Yes, have your way of assessing what you need to do, your routine, but also there has to be a place where you've incorporated space for things to sort of give if things don't work out. Like, there has to be a balance of, what is the utmost important, and then where's some flex in, and I could, slip in and, zone out to Netflix, or, where can I,
what's the buffer?
Yeah, what's the buffer? Exactly. And so, and I think that whole process, like, we individually need to figure out ways to say, okay, like, am I creating space to just ask myself, if it's not something that happens naturally, sometimes people are like, I feel myself getting angry. That's not really something that I can ignore. I'm very, I'm very aware of when that's happening, but maybe it's a little bit more subtle, right? Like resentment or something like that. That's a little bit more covert, like that. That's why it becomes so important to purposely say, how am I feeling right now? And to somehow carve out those spaces. And I think that way, boundaries can shift and change, and like, it just has to be responsive to where you're at, right? Maybe something's okay most of the time, but not right now. And you only know that if you ask yourself, right? And so I think that's the biggest way to sort of make sure, like, that, that's the goal, right? That's prioritizing you, saying that you're not sort of a person that has these hard rules and structures. You can go with the flow. It's just, where am I at right now? And what do I need to institute as a boundary right now? I think that's key.
That's great.
Well, and also, if I can jump in too really quick, talking about boundaries. I remember a book that I read years ago at an old job. It's called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and some other guy. But I think he spoke where I was working, and I remember him talking about it, or maybe it was in the book, but what I remember, whether this was a true, study or not, they had a big, like, play field where I think elementary kids would go and play. And they observed kids in an open field that didn't have any fence around it, right? And they noticed that the kids would play towards the center of the field. Like, they wouldn't actually use up the entire space. But then when they put, like, boundaries or fences around this play area, the children went everywhere, like right up to the fence, and use the entire space. So, I think that illustration is good for, any personality type. If you say, okay, I do have some boundaries that I've put up, and I know what those are, because it helps give me the freedom to move about. I may have a plan within this, this play field, if you will, or I don't. I'm more free flowing, and I might like bounce around to the different activities in the play field. Do you get what I'm saying? So I just thought that was a really great, great illustration. And then the other thing that the book talks about is, boundaries do have gates. So like, even your body, like your skin is a boundary, right? But there's openings, your mouth, your ear, there's different openings. And so, you know, you can have boundaries, but you have gates that you know, open at certain times or close at certain times. And I find that to be very helpful for myself and, you know, for different people and the way that they move about their day.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a really important distinction to make, that, you know, boundaries, you know, can actually help us, you know, live a freer, more, you know, kind of liberated, you know, life, because we feel safe to explore, right? And I know, you know, especially, you know, us with kids, you know, have learned that, you know, that our kids actually do better, right? When they know, you know, how far they can, you know, push and, you know, what those boundaries are. So, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, how old you are, right? You know, the boundaries help us feel safe, feel secure, and feel that we can, you know, be our best self, you know, as well. And so much of that is, you know, creating that space, as you were saying, Lauren, to just be, so that we can know ourselves and that we can prioritize ourselves. And it's those check-ins. Like I love that, you know, that's just kind of something that when we are self-aware and we have that habit of prioritizing ourselves, we're just constantly doing that check-in. And Stephanie, you talked about that a little bit too, right? So sometimes this needs to open, sometimes this needs to close, sometimes this needs to get shuffled around. But through that constant self-reflection and checking in with ourselves, you know, that's how we're able to prioritize ourselves, right? If we are just, you know, madly dashing, you know, through and we haven't taken that time to check in, you know, that's kind of where, you know, we maybe get stuck and lost. And so really appreciate the conversation. Renata's letting me know we only have a couple minutes left. I feel like we could talk about this all day, right? I know I still have so much to learn and to practice. Any final thoughts kind of before we, you know, sign off here about just prioritizing ourselves?
Well, I'll you know, maybe talk about, I know maybe you asked this earlier about like what are some non-negotiables, because I was thinking about this, you know, we talked about this when we did a check-in, the four of us a week ago, and you know, two that came to my head were one is I do a monthly you know, get together with a friend from college. You know, we'll, you know, of course safely during this pandemic time, but that's just something that like our husbands know. I remember the last time her and I got together, she went back home to her 6 children. You know, they were like, Mom, you need to do this more with Stephanie. So, and then the other thing is, some of you might laugh at this, but one of my non-negotiables is watching the most recent episode of The Walking Dead. That is like my fangirl, like TV show, you know, and, you know, I also love This Is Us, so I'm on the spectrum, right? But The Walking Dead has a whole universe and movies coming, so that's a whole nother panel. But for me, you know, that just, it's, I've been watching it for years, and there's really deep character development, and it's a story, and it's a story about survival. And, you know, there's some days where I'm watching this show about the end of the world, and, you know, these characters and these storylines do help me on days where it feels like it's the end of the world for me. That makes sense. So whether that's stories or poetry or, you know, whatever that thing might be for you, like keep on going with that, you know, even if it's something like The Walking Dead. So that would be something that I would say move towards that if it gives you life, or it's something that takes you out of, you know, your everyday. Maybe, you know, for me, it connects me with a fandom of people that watch it with me.
No, that's great. I think for me, the only small thought I'll say is, you know, regardless of kind of where you are on the spectrum of like feeling like you don't prioritize yourself, or maybe you do it really, really well, I think it's just the commitment to revisiting it. Like, I think it's an ongoing struggle. It's an ongoing evaluation. I think that, you know, prioritizing ourselves looks different in different seasons of life. You know, I'm single, unmarried, no children, but I'm working full time and full time school. And so, that looks different. And so it's also just like giving myself permission to say, I just want to explore this. I'll fail a lot, but I'm open to just trying to see what it is, that looks like. And I think that even just entering into that is prioritizing yourself, being willing to fight for it and to try and fail and wrestle with it. So that's my last thought.
That's great. I know I had a teacher when I was in, high school, and, one of the things that she told me that still sticks with me today is that she said, Andrea, there's lots of times in your life where you will feel like you are at the end of your rope, and it's your responsibility to tie a knot at the end of that rope and hang on. And so there's many times in my life where I'm like, yep, at the end of the rope, no one else is gonna, throw me another rope. All right. No one else is gonna, tie this knot for me. I've got to figure it out and tie this knot for myself and just hang on. And sometimes there's a lot of swinging, right? And you think you're not right. Yeah, exactly, Stephanie, right? That's perfect. Yeah. And I think that's what, truly, when we talk about prioritizing ourselves, that's what we're talking about. When we talk about self-care, that's what we're talking about. We're saying that, we have a responsibility, to take care of ourselves so that we can be good employees, right? So we can be good friends and moms and family members. And when we don't do that, when we don't take time for ourselves, then that's, when we can slip a little bit, right? And we're not our best self. We do have a couple minutes left. If anybody wants to maybe ask a question or clarify something that we talked about. Stephanie, you have something?
Oh no, I'm excited for questions. I want to hear questions.
So if I don't have anybody who put Q&A in, but as a participant, if you know how to raise your hand, if you want to do that, then I can turn on mics and you guys can ask your questions verbally if you like, or if there was just something that stood out to you that you wanted to chime in on. We do have a few minutes if anybody wants to participate.
I want to know how you make that spray for yourself, Stephanie. They said there's a lavender spray that you use.
Yeah, it's well, I don't make it. I buy it from a company called Carwell Farms, which is in Washington. And it's lavender hydrosol, HYDROSOL. And I don't actually know how they make it, but it's a process that, when they take the lavender and make it into essential oils and different things, but the hydrosol is used for many different things. But it's like one of the ways that the woman who owns the business talked about was just using it as part of your skincare routine. And I always say lavender never fails, right? So the smell of it, and it's really refreshing. Like you can spray it on in like my 1-year-old daughter, I don't always, but sometimes just on her arm or something like that, just to give a little spritz of lavender. So yeah, check it out. Just you can Google it and find out more about the benefits of it.
I love it. And Amanda had her hand raised. Does that have a question, Amanda?
Yeah. I'm gonna allow to talk here. Go ahead, Amanda. You unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to actually reiterate or give a thought about the smell thing. I have a friend who uses smell really, really strategically, where she has different smells that she sprays for herself to get her in the right mood. So she might use lavender to do a calming thing, but if she needs to feel powerful, she's used these, or she uses sandalwood or something or whatever it is. And it's a really cool thing where she has like these different perfumes for different time periods of her life that also like trigger memories. So anyway, I think that there's really something to that therapeutic triggering the almost primitive part of your brain to be in the right headspace. So anyway, I just wanted to contribute that.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much. I think smell is so powerful because it connects us to emotion, right? So I know like just instantly, different smells will trigger that memory and that different feeling. So yeah, being open and, using all of our senses for self-care, right? And that's really, really good point. Appreciate that. Anything else? Renata, you tell me if I need to stop talking.
Well, I am chiming in because that is the time that we have for this portion. So for now, I'm going to, let's see, I've got several things open here. We're going to say goodbye to our panelists here. And we're going to take a quick break and do an activity. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. There we go. So we're going to do a quick activity. This is a time for a break if you need to use the restroom or refill your tea. Feel free to do that. But we're just going to take a couple minutes to kind of bring this experience out of the screen and into your physical space. So what that looks like, this is called getting in touch with touch. And so if you're going to get up and go do something, please feel free to do that. I am going to keep talking for a minute, but don't worry about that. For those of you that are still with me, I want you to take a few minutes to check in again with how you're feeling, what your mood is. It may be the same as how you felt at the beginning of the session. It may be a little bit different, but really like think about how you're feeling right now. Think about what that mood is, how you would identify it. Next, I want you to stand up, like actually stand up and move around your space. Pick up the things that you see around you, touch things, feel things. Notice how those things make you feel when you touch them. And keep going around, and I want you to keep moving until you come across something that the feeling that it kind of resonates matches the feeling that you identified a minute ago. So if I would say I'm feeling introspective right now, what nearby me kind of resonates that feeling when I hold that, it has that sense of introspection. Now, some of us are really skilled at being in our heads. So it's easy to find a random object and say, oh yeah, that matches. I can make up a narrative that makes this item match what I'm feeling. That's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to actually just kind of turn off the thinking part, touch your item, feel your item, and really let yourself feel what comes out when you're holding that item, and truly find something that matches what you're feeling right now. We're going to do that for a few minutes. I'm going to turn on some music. I'm going to stop talking. If the item is small enough, bring it back with you. We've got, how much time do we have here? We've got 6 minutes. So take your time, and then I'll see you back here in 6 minutes.